Hey, everybody, it's Dave here, Darren over there. We are your two old bloggers, been pontificating on your Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. It's been a long time, folks. And we've gotten psyched up for the season. There's been some good things that have happened and not so good. We'll get into that. In the first theme, though, we're going to go over the game yesterday. Hey, we're 2-0 in this preseason. 2-0 in the McCarthy era, if you want to call it that. But we're 2-0. Haven't won since 2009. Now we've rattled off 2 in a row. That's absolutely fantastic. That'll be theme 1. Theme 2, because Darren hasn't talked about it yet, we're going to talk about what's happened this week. What is the aftermath of J.J. McCarthy having the full-blown repair surgery? I'm curious to hear what Darren has to say. Should be interesting. And then in theme 3, we're going to do this week in Vikings land, all the other stuff that has happened this week, including this morning when we signed Stefano Gilmore to your Minnesota Vikings. All that is next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody, I want to welcome you here from Delton, GMAC. GMAC, is always good to see you. Julian, Dr. Drew himself. Boom, 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 boom. The Tracer, Big Rail and Dad, all happy to see you here. Dan's here, the Doc's here, Raymond's here, Travis is here. This is freaking outstanding. Who else are we missing? Don't see Miss Mary yet. I'm sure she'll join us. And there's Forlorn. Good to see you. And of course, the old timer Davy Chains is here as well. Hey there, Barber. We're about to get ready to start and talk about some football. But first, as always, how's things above the Arctic Circle there, Darren?
Weather's been great. Nice and sunny, pretty warm for this time of year. Got in some tennis on the weekend. Played 3 straight games today, so I'm pretty fucking sore.
Did you win? That's what matters.
No in the mixed doubles, yes in the men's doubles. So
okay, so you split.
They even paid me $50 Canadian to win. So I was like, hey, I'm even making money at this shit now. Not enough to retire on, but beer money at least.
Okay, cool.
I'm always using
that. That's awesome. As you can see, I've got a very smiling Levi Drake Rodriguez on the thumbnail today. And I don't know if you've seen it yet. There was a clip out today. PFF's put it out. A bunch of other people put it out. He just tearing things up. The man's motor does not stop. And if he doesn't make the team, I would be shocked. But it's fun to watch him go. Absolutely go. And he busted some double teams. And it's a blast. But
turned into a folk hero here in Minnesota.
He's trying to real quick. So that's a good thing. But now it's time for theme 1. The game. Always the game.
Always the game, yes. Well, after not winning a preseason game since 2019, Dave, now we won 2 in a row, baby. 2 in a row. So all this talk from the NFL experts that the Vikings are going to finish last. Suck it, NFL experts. This team is a juggernaut. I tell you, a juggernaut. Just kidding. But but still, as you mentioned, I think some very encouraging things came out of yesterday's game, in a game where the Vikings really were in control from the get-go. Yes, neither team played much of their starters. Actually, I don't think the Browns played any of their starters. The Vikings did play what you might call one starter. Yeah. I don't consider Caleb Evans a starter, but some people do. But anyhow,
then two, but we'll get to that.
But I think that when the first thing that kind of struck me yesterday as I was watching this game, something I thought about was that if you remember the previous two preseasons under Kevin O'Connell, when the Vikings would bring their second stringers, their third stringers, and their fourth stringers in, they would just, after watching those particular players work the Cleveland Browns second, third, and fourth stringers yesterday, the Vikings bench players did not quite as decisively, but they were the better players, the better team last weekend against Las Vegas. Watching that, when I look at how those our second, third, and fourth stringers played in the previous two preseasons under Kevin O'Connell, when they get in the game, the Vikings couldn't get anything going on offense, really, and they couldn't get stops on defense. And that is been the complete opposite in these first two preseason games. And I think that is very encouraging for the Vikings, because it shows that the young talent and the depth is improving. We got a ways to go, but I think this roster is much more talented top to bottom than it was in 2022 and even 2023 under Kevin O'Connell. And so that is a great thing. We know injuries happen in the NFL. A lot of them do, and the Vikings have had their injuries.
And we'll talk about some today. Yes.
In preseason and training camp. But when you look at things and that, I guess, the roster, first off, I think the coaches got to get credit, because they are putting in the work and getting these depth guys, these second stringers, third stringers, fourth stringers ready to play and play well in preseason and compete for jobs. And then also, I think you got to give the shout out to the Vikings scouts and player personnel guys who are identifying these young guys the past couple of years, even in the draft and in the undrafted rookie free agents, and bringing them in and identifying that they can be players who can have a shot at being in the NFL and can play quality football. So I think that's I don't know if people agree with me that are watching this. I don't know, Dave, if you do, but that was something that struck me yesterday as I watched the Vikings. Again, dominate might be too strong a word, but we were in control of this game and the better team the entire 60 minutes.
Yes, we were, and it was wonderful to see. Now, however, to cool your jets a little bit, it was 2s on 2s and 2 and 3s on 3s for most of the game, because, like you said, right, there wasn't a whole lot of starters played. They played in the joint practices portion, so we didn't get to see the real deal. But it is good to see that the 2s and the 3s were progressing and driving down the field and scoring points and stopping the other team. Because, like you said, the last 2 years, once the starters were out, Vikings just collapsed because they didn't have that depth. That depth wasn't, you may have had a few of the same players, but it wasn't up to the point where it is now, where it actually looks competent. And you've got to love competent, because competency playing means if somebody goes out, it's not a sudden disaster, because the next guy up, say Kene Nwangwu, will be available, and you know he can get the job done. It may not be as good as Aaron Jones. We don't know, obviously, because we haven't seen Aaron Jones go, but it's not going to be a disaster. And that, I think, is the first time we've had been that way in a long time. And you got to hand it to Kwesi, who's, this is the pay the bills season, but the whole last couple years, this is what's helped get to this point. We are in the, they always talked about the competitive rebuild. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we are almost done with the rebuild. I think that finishes next year. But we are close. And I think we are better off now than we were a year ago overall.
Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, team-wise overall, again, taking into account the competition that was playing against each other. But I thought overall the Vikings run game looked solid yesterday, and we know that that's an emphasis for Kevin O'Connell this year to stick with the run game, have a commitment to the run game. They only averaged 4.2 yards per carry yesterday. The longest run was 13. There wasn't any big, massive, explosive play like Kene Nwangwu's 48-yard touchdown run, but I still think that it looked good. The run defense was really good yesterday. I think they limited the Browns only got 56 yards on 23 carries. That's like 2.4 yards per carry. Last week, the Raiders only got 3.2 yards per carry. So improvement again. They got their longest run was 8 yards yesterday, the Browns. So that was very good. Some things that weren't. Now, we got to keep in mind that guy in the picture there, Nick Chubb, was not playing. That would have made a big difference. But still, you got to stop who's in there. All these guys are getting paid, and they did that. We're going to get to Gaskin later, Anthony Tollison, not too much later.
A lot of these people.
Yeah. Some of the things that weren't so great was the pass defense still is been kind of sieve-like. They allowed Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Tyler Huntley to complete 73% of their passes that they threw yesterday. I'm still, although we made a nice move today, something we've been looking for quite a while to shore that up, but there's still questions about our cornerback room, I think, and there probably will be the entire season considering what's happened with losing players and all of that. And it wasn't all that crazy about the pass protection by the second team offensive line yesterday. Now, on the 2-minute warning, you and Tyler talked about this, and Tyler blamed a lot of this on Nick Mullens. Nick Mullens got sacked 3 times. He got hit 11 times. I think Tyler said he was just holding on to the ball too long. Sure, there was those instances. There was also instances where the Vikings didn't pick up the games that the Browns were running. There was they beat our blockers a little bit too easily. Ed Ingram and Michael Jurgens would be 2 guys I would highlight who had those issues. So it wasn't all on Nick Mullens. And I think it'd be unfair to blame him for everything there. So those are some of the bad things, but still a lot of good. Speaking of Nick Mullens, I got to say, this guy is entertaining as hell to watch play quarterback, the good and the bad. He didn't play last week, gets in there this week, and Kevin O'Connell has him throw the ball all over the yard. 21 passes in the first half. He would have threw for over 40 in a full game. Some nice throws. Some other throws a la Nick Mullens where you're going, no, don't throw that. But I don't know. Like, I like Nick Mullens. I know he's not an all-pro, but geez, when the guy gets in the game, you're going to be entertained. Sometimes the entertainment isn't good entertainment, but
but he's the gunslinger. He doesn't give a damn what anybody's thinking. He's doing what he wants, and he's going to have fun. If it's a tight window and he says, well, I'm still going to throw it, flang, he's going to gun that sucker, and we see what happens. It's going to be interesting.
Delton Vincent still stumping for Tyrese Robinson, who I'm not going to stump for. But anyway, Delton watches the lines a lot closer than I do, so I will defer to him on that one. But beyond Nick Mullens, going to mention, I think, I want to get into like the individual guys that kind of stood out to me because I think that's important. Kene Nwangwu, really encouraged by what we have seen yesterday. He built on that strong performance from last week. I think he actually looked even better this week because he didn't have that big 48-yard run to pump up his stats. He just steady, positive yardage the whole time. He looks a lot more comfortable running than he did the previous couple of seasons. Decisive, making good cuts. He was tough to bring down yesterday, Dave. He broke tackles, showed some physicality that he's a big guy. He's 6'1" and 230 pounds, kind of Adrian Peterson side. So he's a big guy, but we just haven't seen him carry the ball enough to know what he can do. Well, we're getting a kind of a look at that again. I think he had 7-8 carries for 45, 48 yards or something, well over 4. I think he had 5 yards per carry. So longest run was 19. I think Tyler Fornes was talking last week about how the Vikings have changed their blocking scheme, going away from the wide zone to a different, and it suits Kene Nwangwu, and this is looking like it. I thought Myles Gaskin looked pretty sharp too in his time, and I think if you got a running back room that's got Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, Kene Nwangwu improving, and even Myles Gaskin, if the Vikings keep four running backs plus CJ Ham, I think the running back room on the Vikings is going to be stronger than any of us really thought. If, Gaskin, we knew he's kind of a solid pro, and, has kind of had trouble, but he doesn't do anything spectacular. So I think that's why doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities. But if you had to use him, he'd probably do a pretty good job for you. So liking that. Triston Jackson. Got to mention him again, man. What a gorgeous toe-tapping catch that was on the first drive with the Vikings. 3 catches, 38 yards, I think. But give him a roster spot right now. He's making the team. He's making the 53. And you got to feel good for this young man because he's been on the Vikings practice squad since 2021. Cut, brought back, cut, brought back, cut, brought back. Last year he got a few, games in, but that's a tough way to live, Dave, on the practice squad, and you don't know one day from the next if you're going to be there or you're going to have to pack your bags and try to find a new job. He just kept grinding and grinding. He's gotten better and better. This is the kind of the case study, I think, for sticking with the player and developing them and them putting in the work too. Really happy for Triston Jackson. And I think that what we're seeing is that, again, he hasn't been playing against Sauce Gardner, but I think that he is a guy that's he's going to make a positive contribution to the wide receiver room this year. Really happy for him. Jaron Hall.
What I found out interesting about Triston is his best friend is Justin Jefferson. And I guess JJ has been taking him under his wing over the last couple of years. And it shows. But I agree with you. I think Triston Jackson will make.
If you're going to have a guy taking you under his wing, Justin Jefferson's, there's nobody better than Justin Jefferson. You get to learn a lot from that guy.
Oh, come on, camera.
Oh, you got zoomed out. How about Jaron Hall? Last week, I was pretty hard on Jaron Hall. I think rightly so. Felt he needed a bounce back game. He had it yesterday. The 4 for 5, 78 yards. Very nice placement on the fade and the 1 yard fade in the end zone to Malik Knowles. That was nicely thrown. Then very good ball placement, just feathered the ball over the cornerback on the 71 yard catch and run touchdown to Deshaun Jones. I thought he looked a lot more confident again, crisper, more accurate, more decisive. He needed this kind of a game, and he got it. I would like to see him throw the ball a lot more in the final preseason game, kind of like what Nick Mullens did, throw 15, 20 times while you're in there. I just want to see higher volume from him, but that was the performance you want to see, where you can definitely say that Jaron Hall that's the development, that's the improvement you want to see from Hall from his rookie to his sophomore year. And we saw that yesterday. Now we just have to see it repeated. And if he can do that, he's going to stick as your number 3, and you can feel a little bit better about, is he getting better? Yes, he is getting better. And like Tyler said, maybe he's your backup next year. And because he did not look like that last week against Las Vegas, but kudos to him for bouncing back from a very bad performance and playing much better against the Browns yesterday. That was good to see. a few other guys. Bo Richter, maybe not as splashy yesterday as he was against Las Vegas, but, still had a sack, still was around the ball, a few pressures I noticed. Dwight McGlothern got that interception, returned it 90 yards, kind of ran out of gas and couldn't take it to the house. But if you couple that with McGlothern, he had an interception in the joint practices this week where it would have been a pick six if it had been in a game. And I don't know if Richter and McGlothern are making the team. Dave, at this point, I wouldn't bet on that. But those are the kind of, hey, look at me plays that is going to get you noticed by the coaching staff and even by other teams in the NFL. Although I definitely want to see Richter and McGlothern with the Vikings in some way, shape, or form, whether it's practice squad, although I don't think Richter in particular would make it on our practice squad. I think he gets swept up by some team with the way he's looked lately. Kind of running, we're getting to the end of this, but I want to talk about four more players. And three of them are undrafted rookie free agents, one from last year and two from this year. Andre Carter yesterday, I thought he played an awesome game. I think he had 6 tackles, 4 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. I counted at least, I don't know how the Vikings count quarterback pressures, but I saw 4 at least, where he didn't get the sack, but he forced the quarterback to move off a spot or throw early. This is the best I have seen Andre Carter play since last year. I don't know if it's going to be enough to, again, get a roster spot. The Vikings edge rusher room is pretty full, especially with Bo Richter coming on and looking very good. But I thought he played very well. Dallas Gant, here's a kid linebacker yesterday, 9 tackles, 6 solo. He was actually the Pro Football Focus. Again, Pro Football Focus. I know people have issues, but last week he was in 27 snaps, defensive snaps. He was the highest graded Viking defender, 81.3. Yesterday, he was flying all over the place, making a lot of tackles. He missed 1 or 2. That happens, but he's a player. I don't think he's making the team either because we are not going to keep a lot of off-the-ball linebackers, but definitely a guy who's worth stashing on the practice squad and somebody that I think will get elevated to the roster if he makes it on the practice squad. And if there's an injury or 2 on our linebacker, this is a guy that was not on my radar to start the training camp, but he is getting on my radar right now. And another guy Viking fans need to pay attention to, I think, and it got mentioned yesterday on the 2-minute warning, Taki Taimani from Oregon. Last week, I think he had the 3rd best PFF grade of Viking defenders last week in 19 snaps. Yesterday, he played a phenomenal game when he was in there. 37 snaps. He had 6 tackles, 4 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. Really, and he's a guy, I've been watching him. He caught my eye against Las Vegas. I wanted to watch him closely here in this one. And he's a guy that he eats up, he forces, like he takes on multiple blockers. He doesn't give his ground. He actually pushes guys back. And he can create penetration. Not a great guy who's going to give you much in pass rush, except yesterday he did. Pro Football Focus gave him the player of the game yesterday in the Browns-Vikings game, and that means they felt he was the best player on the field for both teams. They gave him 2 pressures and another pass rush win. I like Dave, again, this kid, I don't think, again, can he make the team? I don't know. The Vikings aren't going to keep a whole lot of defensive linemen. Right now, he's 3rd on the depth chart at nose tackle, but the Vikings brought him in for one of their top 30 visits. So they've had their eye on him for a while. And the guy who's ahead of him on the depth chart, Jalen Roy, has done pretty much nothing in the 14 months he's been a Viking. Taki Taimani made more plays yesterday than Jalen Roy has made in 15 months as a Viking. And it wouldn't kill me if they released Roy and kept this guy because, yeah, he's a little short, 6'1". He's listed at 310. I think he's a little heavier than that, but he's a guy that at least on the practice squad, every team needs a nose tackle who can occupy blockers, stuff the run, even if they're not going to be a pass rushing demon. I think this is a guy, he's an older prospect. He turns 25 in October, so he's not as young by college standards, but he's a guy that I think that you would put him on the practice squad, develop him, and in a year or two, he might be a rotational key piece on your defensive line. I've been really impressed with him, Dave. Really, really impressed. Finally, we're getting to the end. Speaking of impressed, how about Lewis Cine yesterday, Dave? We have been giving this guy shit for 2 years on this show, rightly so. Yesterday, 11 tackles, the sack, interception on the tip ball. He almost decapitated, I think, Tyler Huntley on a legal tackle. There was nothing dirty about it.
That's what this picture's from.
Yeah. That was, where has this been for 3 seasons, Dave? Where has it been? Because he needed this performance and he got it. Now, were the Vikings showcasing him for a trade and trying to drive up his trade value? If they were, mission accomplished, because every good play he made yesterday drove up his trade value. Great to see from Cine. I root for the young man. So it was great that this is the best he's ever looked as a Viking. Now we have thought he's going to be a goner on this roster for the past several months. He's like 7th on the Vikings depth chart at safety, or so we thought. But maybe after seeing this, maybe Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Brian Flores might be reconsidering either cutting him or trying to trade him after what they have seen. Just because, no pun intended there, just because, look at it, Dave, because, okay, our 4 top safeties are obviously Harrison Smith, Cam Bynum, Theo Jackson, and Josh Metellus. After that, though, Jay Ward, who was ahead of Cine on the depth chart, he's now a corner. I don't think he's going to make the team as a corner. If he doesn't, do they put him back at safety? I don't know. The other safety who's in the room right now is Bobby McCain, the veteran. He had a big hit on a Raiders tight end last week, but otherwise he has not really looked all that. So between Ward and McCain, if Cine plays and he's going to get a lot of run next week against Philly, if he can put a similar performance like he did against Cleveland in this one, I don't know. He may save his roster spot on the Vikings and maybe even his NFL career by doing that, Dave. So something to watch there. And hey, we want him to do well because he was the 32nd overall pick in the 2022 draft. He would be one of the biggest busts in Vikings draft history if things kept going the way they are going. So something to watch there.
No. That belongs to.
I said one of the biggest. I didn't say the biggest.
All right.
We know Demetrius Underwood has got that locked up.
He's got that locked up.
So yeah, those are my thoughts. A lot of thoughts, but Dave, I don't know if you've got if I missed anybody that you think is.
I have a few thoughts of my own. I think they were showcasing Cine yesterday. He played every single snap on defense, and he played half the special teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's, to me, they are showcasing him. That's not hey, let's hope he gets it this game. This is by far his best game of his career. I'll admit that it was. But it's the first best game in 3 years. Now, granted, he had the leg broken and all that sort of stuff. But I think yesterday was to put things on tape so other people could see, and hopefully they get something in return for him. Now, if they want to keep him, he's showing development. That's good. That's a good thing. And his speed is good. Now, yesterday, as I talked on the live on a 2-minute warning, tackling for the entire defense needs to improve. But I think that's across the league complaint by fans that tackling by defense needs to improve. It's not just a Vikings thing. I think it's a 31 other teams thing as well. And that's just because we're that part of the year and they don't practice it until they get to the preseason games. Because you can try tackling all the foam donuts you want. It's still not the same as tackling a live player and bringing them to the ground. And that only starts at the preseason games. So tackling was poor. Now, what we sort of skipped over, and I want to hit from the game, is my boy. And of course, everybody knows who my boy is. Ed.
I did forget this.
Yes. And Ed, what I saw on Saturday, and I went off on live at the 2-minute warning. One, I thought he got beat on a loop, a stunt, where he and Quisenberry were not communicating well, and whoever it was, I thought it was Ed, didn't come off because the guy came to the inside, which was the side Ed was on. So I blame it on Ed. Tyler thought differently. He gave it the excuse of, well, it could have been Quisenberry's, it could have been whatever. The communication isn't there. Ed's playing with the second team instead of the first team. You require chemistry. And no, all those things are true. O-lines require chemistry. It's almost a telepathic sort of deal. But that one play stuck out for me and left a bad taste in my mouth. And I didn't see anything extraordinary that's stuck out. Now, I've got to go back and watch the film, and I will watch the film. But we ran well. Well, running the ball well is a function of the offensive line as well. And they did run well to the right yesterday. So it could be that. Now, PFF just raked him over the coals, said he was horrible. But there's different views out there. Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and our very own Tyler thinks that he dominated when it came to run blocking yesterday, that he was a man amongst boys, a starter amongst second and third stringers, and he was just annihilating people. Okay, I look forward to watching the tape to see if I see that, because nothing stood out. And I don't, sometimes I watch a particular player, 2 or 3, on focus on alignment, but normally I'm like everybody else. I'm watching where the ball's going and seeing what's happening around, and unless something pops up or stands out, you don't see it. So I've got to look at that. But I really want my boy Ed to succeed. And we've been through this numerous times. I've done the deep dives, the whole works, showed you the graphs, bored you to death, how year 3 is the year they take you, take that next step. And he was adequate last year. He was middle of the road out of all the guards. Well, we wanted to get him up on the top side. So we'll see what happens with my boy Ed. I thought it was interesting just that he was in there with the twos. Like we think that he's the starting right guard apparently, but they had him running with the twos. So does that mean the Vikings coaching staff doesn't feel he has it locked up? And who is his competition if he doesn't have it locked up? Well, Dalton Reisner, we think he's going to get cut. He's injured. He hasn't really provided any resistance to Ed Ingram. So who is the guy that's going to be excuse me, is going to be the one that goes in for Ed Ingram if the Vikings coaching staff decides that he's not up to snuff, that they've waited long enough for Ed Ingram to get it and be the solid pro that they expected him to be when they drafted him out of LSU in 2022 in the second round. Mm-hmm. I don't know who that is. I don't know either. We have I'm trying to remember his name. There's another young guard that we could develop that I hope makes the practice squad so that we can develop in the future. But I don't think Ed has any real competition. I think the job is his by default, and I wish it was better. Delton, his PFF grades, and I saw them posted on Twitter. I'd have to look, but they were like in the 30s for run blocking and 20s for pass blocking. They were horrible. They ranked them on the polls. And I say bullshit to that. They wasn't that bad. No. So it's going to be interesting to see. Now, Dalton Risner, if he ever gets healthy, he might have a chance, but we'll find out. Big Rail Dad Rouse, I thought had a decent game yesterday as well. Jurgens, I want to watch the tape on Jurgens some more because after his good first game, he didn't have as good second game. Now,
Yeah, I think my opinion, Dave, is that when you watch the tape, you're not going to be very happy with your boy Jurgens. He got knocked on his back on one rep. He got beat on a few others. He didn't look like he knew how to pick up the games that the Browns were running on the front line. I think Delton yesterday said he thought he played really well.
Tyrese Robinson is the young guard.
But Robinson was playing left guard yesterday. Not now. Maybe that's interchangeable and no big deal. But I didn't. Yeah, I thought Jurgens did not look very good yesterday. But hey, you have one good game against the Raiders, maybe one bad game against the Browns. You're a rookie. You're a 7th round draft pick. Or was he a sixth round draft pick? Anyway, not like he needs some time to be developed. And the Vikings are, I think, willing to put in the time. I think he's going to make the team, especially with his flexibility. They had him playing center yesterday into the third quarter, I think. But he's also can play guard. See some people talking about Will Reichard. Other than the extra point, which was just the first extra point, was just squeezed into the left.
It did this.
Yeah, every kick he kicks is up
Straight down the middle.
Straight down the middle. Love it. Love it.
Now, I had hoped yesterday they were going to allow him to kick the 65-yarder, but they sent in Vernon to try to put it inside the 10, and Vernon blew that one, and he kicked it to only the 20. It was about a 30-some-odd yard punt. And I think Wright locked up that job. I thought he had it locked up before, but, that was that. So, but my boy Ed, I was so disappointed with what I saw. Now, you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's just, what you see as you're watching. You're not studying it. You're not looking at the whole thing. But as a whole, the offense moved the ball. We scored. We basically dominated. That's a good thing. That's what you want. I don't care how badly you play. If we're scoring points and driving the ball and winning, we're scoring points and driving the ball and winning. That's the overall objective. So
you can't be playing that bad if you're moving the ball up and down the field and scoring points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it might be a bad play here and there, but total wise, the execution was like up to snuff.
Mm-hmm. So it's
baby face it's at.
We won again. We kept them to 12 points and we kept them to 10. We gave them the last 2, but we kept them to 10. Defense is playing well, and that's the backups on defense. You got to love how this is going so far. So,
yes.
But that's it for the game yesterday. Now we'll move on to theme 2. Whoa, I'm way behind on the remarks. And Delton, no, he's always had problems with stunts. And that's something that you would hope he gets with somebody with experience that coaches to teach him how to better do that in the off season. That's what gets me going. A big rail, Dad. Thank you for the $1.99. What's the priority this year, run or pass? With Kevin O'Connell, I'm always going to say it's pass, but he wants a much more efficient and better run game. This isn't going to be, Mike Zimmer, let's haul the rock like it's 1992. It's going to be, we're going to still throw most, but he wants a much, much better run game. Hey, Purple Papa, welcome over here watching us. Glad you are here. You are highly motivating. All right. Anthony says we should have kept Ezra. I think part of that was for money reasons, trying to get under the deal. And Purple Papa, we are going to talk about that right now in theme 2. Purple Papa is very much loving him some Sam Darnold. But we're going to discuss it bye. We have injury fallout because, as we know, somebody tore his meniscus and then had surgery. I've talked about it plenty this week. Now it's Darren's turn.
Yeah, everybody gets a shot at this, Dave. But we, of course, the news came down on Sunday, right? You sent me with expletives about the knee soreness, or I think it was Monday. And then it progressively got worse from there. And then we learned on Wednesday that McCarthy wasn't going to get just the trim with his meniscus injury. They were going to do the full Monty, and he's done for the season, which sucks for McCarthy, sucks for the Vikings, sucks for Viking fans, because this is like the number one piece of excitement that we had as fans, was watching him progress, seeing if he could be the franchise guy we've been looking for since Fran Tarkenton. And now we're going to have to wait another year for that to happen. So again, sucks what happened to JJ McCarthy. And we were on cloud nine last week, a week ago, Dave, you and I, after watching McCarthy play so well against the Raiders. I think it was only a preseason game and one preseason game, but what I saw was like, I think this kid, who I've been hearing great things about, he looks like he's got it. Like, he is legit. And so now, again, that all gets delayed. And now a week later or a couple of days later, I'm like trying to find Xanax so I can not have a panic attack because of JJ McCarthy is done for the season with this sort of thing. So not great. And of course, he's going to be able to do some things to help his development. Yeah, he'll do the film study. He'll still be with the team. He'll be working with the coaches on the mental side of stuff, and there's the mental reps and all that sort of thing. But the in-game stuff, the live reps and practice, that's all going to be delayed several months now. So he's not going to be next year at this time in August 2025, he's not going to be where he should have been development-wise, I think, if he had gotten two more appearances in preseason, maybe gotten into a game and even being the starter for the Vikings. That's all been delayed, and that's one of the biggest reasons why this sucks, because yes, it is. He can do things to still develop as a pro, but it's not going to come close to being in the game and having it all play out live against opponents that you don't practice against and who aren't your teammates, day in and day out. Yeah. And what also sucks is that I don't think, that there was still a chance he could have been the starter in week 1 based on what he did against Las Vegas. I mean, just, look at it. Let's say in the joint practices, McCarthy balls out. And we know Sam Darnold really struggled on Wednesday against the Browns. Was better on Thursday, but he struggled on Wednesday. Let's say McCarthy looked like the superior guy in both of those joint practices compared to Sam Darnold. And let's say yesterday he plays just as well or better than he did against Las Vegas, and he follows that up with the same thing against Philly next week, and he looks better than Darnold if Darnold even got to play in those games. I think if he had done those things, and it was a big if he had done those things, that would have made a strong case for him to be that he's ready to be the starter. He's checked all the boxes that Kevin O'Connell's looking for, and it would have at least made the decision a lot tougher for Kevin O'Connell on who was going to be the starter September 8th against the New York Giants, JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold. Well, that's all out the window now. And again, that sucks in a big way.
Now, I want to scroll back up. SKOL Mafia, thank you for the $4.99. And yes, good things come to those that wait, and we're going to have to wait. So still, I would have loved to seen him. We all know a friend of the show, Mr. Ted Glover, thought he would have been ready for week 1. We were all so pumped up after last week, and it was so disappointing. Now, big rail on that. I saw your super chat as well. You said, what about the conspiracy theories that he was hurt before? We happen to have an expert in the audience with us, Mr. Drew Bunting, the Drewster of Vikings report with Drew and Ted. And if you aren't already subscribed to them, you should be. It's an absolute blast to watch. They've added Christopher Gates, the Grand Poobah from the Daily Norseman, and of course, Toonses and her fantastic trivia. It's a wonderful show. But the theory I heard, Big Rail and Dad, was that during some game at Michigan, he went down and supposedly hurt his knee, and then he played and it collapsed on it, but he continued to play after that. I don't know if that's the case. Drew would know if that is indeed what happened. And if the theory is that he tore his meniscus then and just played with it and it was okay, the flap, say the tear went back into normal, and then on last weekend, it flipped up and went back underneath the bone. Maybe. I know with my tear, that can sometimes happen. But I don't know if
these prospects do medicals and stuff as part of the draft process? Like, wouldn't that have been covered?
And I don't know if they run them through MRIs, from their, tips of their toes to the top of their heads or not. But, and if he would, and he obviously won the national title with them and played great virtually all year. So I don't know if the conspiracy is true or not. Like I said, Drew Bunting would know best because he's an avid, born and bred Michigan Wolverines fan. He watches every game, every snap.
Oh, there you go.
He watches who they're recruiting.
Drew says it was a bruised knee, was not anything more serious than that. So, the suck meter on the McCarthy injury is high, off the charts. But when you look at other players on the Vikings, does the injury in a weird way help some players? Tyler Forness got into that. You and him got into that earlier in the week when you went live on the McCarthy is done for the season. And Tyler said, and I agree with him, is that with McCarthy being out for the year, this eases the pressure on Sam Darnold. Now he is on the unquestioned number one guy, and there's no looking over his shoulder at JJ McCarthy. So if he has a bad quarter or a bad half or a bad game, he doesn't have to worry that Kevin O'Connell's going to yank me out, because Darnold knows that he's here probably for 1 year. He is not the future of the Vikings. Maybe not even he's the present now, but he's not the future. He knows he's here as a bridge quarterback. And so I think it's a tough way to live when you consider the career he has had in the NFL. If he would have to be wondering, if I have a bad game, am I getting benched? Are they going to turn to Kevin? Are they going to turn to JJ McCarthy? That is not now. As a pro in the NFL and pro sports, a lot of people are going to say, and this is also true, that's the way it goes. You got to deal with that. If you can't, then you can't be in professional sports. If you're worried about, are you going to get benched? It happens to lots of people, but I think this is one less thing for Sam Darnold to worry about. And I think that'll allow him to play freer and more confident that, again, if he has a little bad stretch, he is still going to be the quarterback, because he's going to have to play bad for several games for Kevin O'Connell to turn to Nick Mullens, because Nick Mullens isn't the future either.
Neither is this guy.
No, yeah, but I think this also helps Jaron Hall in a weird way, because with JJ McCarthy, Hall knew he was the number 4 guy on the pecking order. He knew that likely after the final preseason game, he's going to be cut and on the practice squad. So that, again, now he's firmly the number 3 guy. Now the Vikings signed Matt Corral this week. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too. And it's possible that the Vikings, after the preseason, they could look to see if there's a quarterback that's released that they think is a better option than Hall. That's always a possibility. But I think Hall, he looked very indecisive. He played very tight against the Raiders. And I think yesterday what we saw was a much better version of Jaron Hall, who looked more decisive, played looser, and played much, much better. And I feel that now that he has at least he's the odds-on favorite to be the number 3 guy right now. I think that allows him to loosen up too. And I think we saw that yesterday against the Browns, and hopefully we see that next Saturday against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think the injury, as terrible as it is, it's got some positives for Darnold and Jaren Hall. And I think that's important because Darnold's going to be our starter. We want him to play well. We don't want him to be worried about when he's going to how long, if he plays bad, does he get benched again? And Hall is a guy, again, that I would like to see get better and be in a position where he could be the backup or even a potential starter, and we could flip him for some draft capital in a season or two. I don't think that'll happen, but that's the dream with Jaren Hall for me.
Mm-hmm. It very well could, but I agree with you. This unfortunate incident, one, J.J. McCarthy he's already said he's going to learn and stick to the hip of Kevin O'Connell. Justin Jefferson says he's going to do cut-ups with him. He's going to be in a QB room learning all the language and everything else and how to plan for games and all that. I think this is, in the long run, going to be good overall for everybody. Now, we're seeing in the chat the argument for grass. Give us grass. Nobody gets hurt on grass. That's not quite true. Plenty of people got hurt in grass. Kirk Cousins last year, grass.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of people who get hurt on grass. As for the turf in the U.S. Bank Stadium is brand spanking new. They replaced it. They had the slit film turf, which is the one that everybody supposedly hated the worst. They have replaced it this year with the new, there's another type, and then there's hybrids. They've replaced it with the new stuff. It is supposedly much, much better. We'll find out. I have deep dived into this subject numerous times. Believe it or not, players are roughly split 50-50. You don't hear it. You hear grass. But they're roughly split 50-50 as to which they prefer to play on, turf or grass. Turf is faster. They can get better traction. They look better. They perform better. Players want to perform because they get paid for doing this, right? So they want the better surface. Grass, grass has its own problems. And when it comes to cost, because you got to look at cost too, believe it or not, maintaining a good grass field, especially indoors, is going to be more expensive. Now, when it comes to indoors, you cannot grow grass in U.S. Bank Stadium as it's presently designed. Sorry, you can't. There's not enough light. You would have to add special types of lights. They're experimenting with growing grass indoors over in Europe and some of the soccer stadiums. It requires special lighting that gets just the right wavelength. It's like your daylight bulbs. If you're a photographer, you're going to need that. You need watering. You need, for environmental stuff, to pull out the water because the inside of a building isn't designed to have that much humidity from watering inside, the building. There's all sorts of things. The U.S. Bank was not designed for it. It's structurally not designed for it. So it's virtually impossible, and you're probably never going to see it, at least not now. Buildings would have to be purposely designed for them to have grass in it. And the only ones that do have grass are generally the ones with the tray system, where the grass is grown outside and then they slide it in for the game. And then you have, yes, Doc, basically industrial grow lights, yes, is what they need. Are the ones they slide the tray in. Well, as we found out during the Super Bowl in Arizona, that causes problem because you slide it in, tray's warmer than in January, I don't know how warm it was, but it's a different temperature than the inside air, and they got wet and slick, and they had problems. Then you have paint problems because you have paint on it, and paint makes it slick, and it causes problems too. It's a whole different realm. But like I said, players are split 50-50. And that's not to take, some people have done studies about injuries because of too much traction. Cleats are too grabby, right? Or can be. They've gone with longer ones. There are different ways you can look at, well, what caused the injury? We still don't know if it was, we know to tear your meniscus is generally a twisting motion on the knee. That we do know. We don't know if it was caused by, say, when he spun and he twisted his knee, or if he tried to, jump to the outside and he twisted his knee, or if it was caused by contact on a tackle. We don't know where exactly it happened. So, was it the turf? We don't know. But like I said, we have brand new, the best turf. The Wilfs have not spared any expense. We have the best stuff in the business. So, anyways, Z30, I'm done. We don't need to dive more into turf versus grass, but it's one of those things that gets brought up anytime there's a lower leg injury, and we don't know.
David did want to get a quick comment or two from you, because you've had a meniscus injury now. It happened when you're in, I think, your 30s.
I just turned 50 or just shy of 50.
Oh, okay. So that's a bit different than a 21-year-old, I think. Yeah. But any concerns from you about this being like this injury creating a sort of a long-term degenerative kind of issue for JJ McCarthy, where it cuts into his actual playing career?
Not with the full fix.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the reasons they went with full fix. If they would have just trimmed it up, you would have induced arthritis quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who lives a hard life, whether it be in the military, jumping out of airplanes, playing football, doing whatever, arthritis is going to become a thing of most likely in your future. You don't want to speed it up. And that's what would happen. You'll get Sam Darnold knees, and you don't want that. So they did the right thing. They've got it the full fix. He should not have anything that interferes with his career from that knee and that repair, from here on out. When he gets 60, because he played football, he may need a knee replacement. But as for his career, if he plays for us for 10 or 15 years, then it shouldn't bother him.
Okay. Yeah. That was what I was wondering about, because when this happened, I thought, even though not the same deal, I thought back to Sam Bradford and how he just continually had knee issues that stretched back from his days in Oklahoma and maybe before that, and it ended his career prematurely. He just because his knees just couldn't take it anymore,
right?
And they just kept on getting injured, and so we don't want that to happen with JJ McCarthy, because I think Bradford played 6 seasons, something like that. And then he was done. You don't want the franchise to be
right. And he's still young.
Circuited.
He's still going to be 2 years younger than everybody that was drafted this year. So
he'll be 22 the entire 2025 season. Like we were just talking about Taki Taimani, he'll be 25 in October, and he's a rookie too. So there's he's young, and that, he's like the rookies used to get pre-COVID, before they gave them an extra COVID year or two, it seems.
Well, just think, if he had stayed in school, this would be his senior year.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be the number 1 pick coming out, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
I think we're going to be doing fine.
Just a year delayed from doing fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, I think the whole, sticking on the hip of KOC and buddying up with Justin Jefferson, cutting film, and all that, I think that's going to be a benefit. Because he's going to start seeing things he may skip out on the footwork deal because he can't do that while he's rehabbing, but he's going to increase the mental stuff. And what's the thing that needs to speed up the most? And that is the mental processing when you make the jump, especially at quarterback. So
Sure is.
Dave, if it's junk, I'm sure it is under warranty at this point in time, but we'll find out. Let's see. Anthony said he had his done it, torn his at 24 due to knee contact. Never had it fixed due to lack of insurance, 58, and he does have problems with it. You're going to get it, but did you have problems with it, Anthony, at 30? That's the deal, or 35. We hope JJ is still kicking, playing well at 35. So anyways, that's theme 2, some of the fallout of JJ McCarthy's injury. Now on to theme 3. And this one is our traditional. Turn it on, David. This week in Vikings land.
Yeah, going over the news of the week from the Vikings that we didn't already get to, and the first one I'm going to touch on is that this has been a training camp dominated by, unfortunately, in a lot of dominated by bad news, injury news, whether Mekhi Blackman, Shaq Griffin, and all of that. And we had another one this week, Jordan Addison. Early on in the first joint practice, he goes down with an ankle injury, and it looked bad. Kevin O'Connell did say later on in the week that Jordan Addison avoided a major injury, and that he doesn't anticipate that he's going to miss any regular season games, which is great to hear, except it is not a guarantee. We often hear about this where a guy is just around the corner from coming back, and he is not around the corner. So this is something to monitor, the Jordan Addison injury, because the Vikings are already going into week 1, and TJ Hawkinson is probably not going to be there. If you don't have Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, that is going to make the Vikings offense much, much less menacing than it will be when it's at full strength. So speedy recovery, Jordan Addison. I don't know, and we're still waiting on the legal process with his DUI. So that might not get.
We won't hear about that until the London trip, because it's the day after the London trip.
But at this point, the health of his ankle is the thing that we've got to monitor, and hopefully he can be suited up for September 8th. As it gets closer to September 8th, we're going to have to monitor this and see if is he practicing.
KOC seems to think he'll be ready to go week 1.
Yeah, they were. He sounded at least not terribly pessimistic about JJ McCarthy's injury at one point this week too, and that ended up not turning out so good.
And we always remember, with him, it's knee soreness. That's just knee soreness. It's common.
Yeah.
And before that, it's just a tweak. There's nothing wrong. It's just a tweak. He slept.
He'll be back in time. Yeah. So that's one injury. Now, another injury I want to bring up is just what's going on with Gabe Murphy. All through training camp and practices, we were hearing great things about Murphy, really enthused to see him play against Las Vegas. Then before that game, we find out he's not going to play. Well, he didn't play last week in the joint practices. He wasn't suited up for the games. We don't know what the issue is. For Murphy, as strong as he had played in training camps so far, again, the edge room at the Vikings is quite competitive. There is talent there. And especially with the way Bo Richter has looked, with the way, even with the way Andre Carter looked last week. I don't know, does Murphy, you can't make the club in the tub, as Mike Zimmer used to say. And so I don't know if Gabe Murphy is going to make the team if he can't actually show his wares in a preseason outing, and he's only got one more to be healthy enough to play. So this is disappointing to me because because again, we've heard such great things about what he's done, and we have not been able to see that because of an injury. We don't even know what the injury is. So unfortunate for Gabe Murphy. I guess the only bright side of that would be because he hasn't been in any preseason games, there's no tape of him. So if he is put on the practice squad, he doesn't make the 53. I don't know if another NFL team will scoop him up, offer a practice squad right away, because they can't point to a preseason game where Gabe Murphy did this and Gabe Murphy did that. He hasn't done anything. But it's disappointing that he has not been able to do anything because of this injury, of which the origins we do not know.
Yeah, it's a mystery deal because it's not the regular season yet. You skipped one, though.
Oh, Blake? Yes. Well, Blake Cashman, he hurt his finger, required stitches. But again, KLC, that's not a big deal, but sounds like he kept on playing through the joint practices. And I think that, no biggie there. But again, another guy who's got nicked up with a boo-boo. And then Thayer Thomas, this is he also got injured, concussion. That's more than a boo-boo for him. And unfortunate for Thayer Thomas, because he's in a battle to get a roster spot. I don't think he was going to get it, but even practice squad like last year, he is a guy who has improved, I think, compared to what we saw last year. Certainly returning punts, much more sure-handed. He made a couple of nice catches in the game-winning drive that Jaron Hall engineered last week against Las Vegas. So unfortunate for him to get a concussion at this point in training camp. Much better to have that done the first week than to have it when the preseason games roll around for a Thayer Thomas.
And they got it when his head hit the ground.
Yeah. And in joint practices, what seemed like a very physical first day of joint practices with the Browns.
Yep. So
because Jim Schwartz is a dickhead.
Well, could be. There was another one you wanted to mention.
Well, did I want to mention Bo Richter?
I thought you had to go off the list. Or I may have put that in the wrong spot.
But I think, I think that earlier, I feel like Richter is a guy who was really impressed even yesterday, even when he didn't have as many stats, tackles for a loss as he did the previous game. But how do you keep this guy off the team? And he can play special teams, Dave, and he plays it well. That's a way you get on the roster, not only with what you can do on the defensive side of things, but being able to be a versatile piece on special teams. Really, really like what I've seen from Bo Richter. And I got to say, I did not have any hopes of him being much of anything heading into the training camp or preseason, but he's been one of the stars so far the first two games, and really impressed with what I've seen from him. And I want to see more.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see where we are in the notes. Oh, you wanted to talk about ESPN. I didn't get my graphic for it. I should grab it. And Mr. Clay. Before we get to Stefan Gilmore.
Well, yes. Yeah, that was, well, this week, ESPN ranked every NFL team by roster position. They did it on Friday. Mike Clay wrote the piece. He's not very impressed with the Vikings roster overall. He ranked the Vikes 27th in the league. Ouch. Are we really that bad? But according to Clay, the Vikings have a lot of
smoking weed. Like people have been discussing. I think Mike Clay is full of.
According to Clay, the Vikings have a lot of weak positional groups overall, Dave. He ranked our quarterback unit last, 32nd in the league, but he admitted that if McCarthy were healthy, even though McCarthy has never played an NFL regular season game, and playing, that we wouldn't have brought up the rear there. So I guess there's that. Plenty other positions, though, where Clay ranked the Vikings poorly. 24th at running back, 19th on the offensive line, 26th on the interior defensive line, 24th overall at off-ball linebacker, 25th at corner. Our highest ranked position was safety. Clay had his third overall in the NFL on that, and wide receiver, where we were ranked 9th. And if you're wondering about the edge rusher and tight end, Clay had the Vikings 14th and 12th in the NFL respectively there. This is one man's opinion, Dave, and if you're Viking fans, you don't like to see it, and you probably don't agree with it. We know you don't. I think he could have ranked the Vikings running backs higher than 24th overall, just with Aaron Jones in the fold, who's been one of the best in the league since he's been in the league in 2017. I also think by year's end, that 14th overall ranking at edge rusher is not going to age well. We talked about Dallas Turner last week. He was a bit quiet yesterday, but that's okay. But by all accounts, he's been a standout in OTAs, training camp, and he looked good against Las Vegas. Jonathan Grenard, I think, is going to be a menace in the Brian Flores system. So is Andrew Van Ginkel. He's recovered from the Lisfranc injury, and he stood out, according to what I read, as the Vikings probably the best defender at joint practices against Cleveland this week. Pat Jones II, been hearing good things about him. He's been getting regular shout-outs from the Vikings beat writers. Maybe he's finally going to put it all together in year 4, which would be good for him because it's a contract year. And then you had it up there. Then you got edge rushers like Bo Richter. Gabe Murphy trying to push the way in the mix. Andre Carter yesterday.
That's why it makes these. I think the dude hit his head on something. These rankings make no sense. But I hope the rest of the league thinks this and prepares accordingly.
Got him right where we want him, Dave.
Yep, like exactly. Now, saving the best for last.
Drew says rankings suck.
Yes, they do suck.
Particularly power rankings. Hey, look at that. Gilmore, Stefan Gilmore in Vikings purple. Nice.
Well, that was Eli Corbett. His image. He did this, and he's an outstanding graphic artist. And I want to give him a shout out for me borrowing this. But he did a good job, and he's got him as number 5. Number 5 is available. So we'll find out this week what number he actually does take. I'm pretty sure he gets just about any number he wants, much to the disgust of somebody who happens to have it already. But we'll see.
Well,
QB rankings were down near the bottom, Gary. They were, what were they? 20. I'm looking real quick. 32nd.
Oh, yeah. We were dead last.
That's where Clay had us, 32nd.
However, big news today. Stefan Gilmore signed with the Vikings, found that out this morning. 6 days after he visited the Vikings, 1-year deal, $10 million overall, $7 million guaranteed, I believe. I was kind of wondering, we talked about this online, Dave, about how I was kind of pessimistic. I was pessimistic about it. And I said, if he wanted to be here, he would already sign on the dotted line. You said, hey, Brian Flores was smiling when he got asked about this recently. Gilmore is going to be here. You were right, Dave. I was wrong. And I am happy that I am wrong, which happens a lot, by the way. But Gilmore, this is a guy we identified 3 weeks ago as somebody the Vikings needed to kick the tires on. They did. They wanted him here. It was a matter of whether Gilmore wanted to be here. Gilmore is now signed on the dotted line. He is here. And Will Ragatz kind of had a tweet this morning about how, the cornerback room with Gilmore, if you got Griffin, Gilmore, Byron Murphy Jr., Caleb Evans, maybe McGlothern or Duke Shelley, that's a lot better than without, Gilmore in it. And Gilmore just adds to the depth. He's a veteran who's been an excellent, excellent corner his entire career, NFL Defensive Player of the Year at one point. He knows Brian Flores well, played under him for 2 years. And the Vikings, as we saw in the 2 preseason games against Las Vegas when they had Minshew and O'Donnell in the game, and also yesterday with the Browns quarterbacks, they've been completing a lot of passes for big yardage against us. Again, not always against the starters, mostly not against the starters, but I think that would, if we hadn't made a move to get Gilmore beyond what we've done, I think that the cornerback room, that would have carried over into the regular season and it would have killed us. So really, really happy that the Vikings have signed Gilmore, and as Kevin Seifert pointed out in his tweet about this. This shows the Vikings are not punting on 2024, that they feel that they can be a factor in the NFC North and in the NFC playoff picture. Otherwise, you don't bring in a one-year rental veteran like this. And I think it also shows that Gilmore must think that the Vikings have a decent roster too, or else he would have been waiting a little bit longer and looking for maybe a situation where he could play on a team that was more of a Super Bowl contender. So, hey, happy with the move. Long, overdue, but it got done, and it got done before the regular season started. And hey, 2 thumbs up for me on this move, and I hope it works out. I think it will.
Now, Jeremy Fowler did confirm that Carolina was also offering him a contract. He's from Carolina. The Carolinas, one of the two, but he chose the Vikings over Carolina. Now, whether we sweeten the pot a little bit or not to get him up here, I don't know. I doubt that's sort of the case, because I bet, like I said, when asked after the fact, Brian Flores was just lit up. He knew something, and I think everybody did. Not like I said, he's 34 years old. He wants to take the preseason off. We know some older players that do that. So, and I think that's what happened. So I think it's a good thing that he did it. He's got the pedigree. Now, yes, is he as good as when he was defensive player of the year? No. But he's a smart, grizzled old vet that knows where the ball's going probably before the quarterback does. So it's a good thing. It's sort of like Patrick Peterson a couple of years ago, right? I'm looking forward to seeing him out there. Now, Drew asked me before the show, is he now the best corner on the team?
Who else would be your candidate? Based on, track record, like Shaq Griffin. Griffin was good 1 year, made the Pro Bowl, but has been pretty spotty since 2020, I think. Byron Murphy Jr., as much as he's got the talent. He was highly drafted second rounder, but he's never really played very well at the pro level, and he didn't play all that well last year. And Caleb Evans,
competent. He's just not a superstar.
Yeah, well, competent is all fine, but it ain't defensive player of the year.
Right.
Or anywhere close to that. And then Caleb Evans, I'm not going to waste a whole lot of breath on him.
Well, and you got to see what happened to the Vikings this year. We lost Kyrie Jackson, who we expected to compete to start. We lost
Mekhi
Blackman for the season, who was expected to start. The Vikings went out and signed 5 different cornerbacks so far this offseason to help with that. And this is the best of the bunch. So I'm not, it goes to show you they are trying to win and think they can. And I think they can too. We've all seen all the absolute national sports media gushing over Caleb Williams. He's just one of a kind. We haven't seen anybody like that since,
yes.
God.
It's amazing. Amazing how everybody lost their shorts in the media when Drake May ran for like a 2-yard touchdown run.
Yes, I know. Purple Papa, as far as the defensive tackle, I think we're going to target it next year's draft. There's a couple that Tyler and I have talked about that are very, very high on my peak list. However, we may go for a cornerback next year because we're going to need corners. So you can never have enough, and we have bad luck with them, unfortunately. So we'll see. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. You guys have been great in the chat. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you here talking, bringing up some good points. We'll love you for it. We've got another week to go, preseason. This one out to the dreaded Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see how that goes and see what happens all this week. Hopefully everybody heals up and is good to go, but we'll see what happens. Hey, Anthony thinks Vikings 10-plus win in 2024 or the playoff berth. Could be.
Anthony. Me likey, if that turns out.
Could be. We'll find out. But any last words there, Darren?
None. I've talked way too much.
Well, and you're tired. I need to go fix some steaks that I've had marinating, ready to go. And I want everybody to have the rest of their Sunday as a great weekend. And if you watch the game tonight, make sure you're rooting against that team from Wisconsin. What do we say, buddy?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!